begin with breaking news. President Trump's legal team has now responded in just the last few seconds to Robert Mueller's latest offer for a presidential interview. This is Outnumbered Overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. Now to the breaking news. The president's attorneys releasing a statement saying they have sent a letter now to the special counsel regarding its request to sit down with President Trump in its Russia investigation. Meanwhile, Rudy Giuliani is once again calling on Mueller to wrap it up, this investigation. Chief White House correspondent John Roberts is live with the latest on this. So break it down. We knew that there was something coming today. What is it?
Yep. And Harris, good afternoon to you. And just as you were introducing me there, I was finishing up a phone call with Rudy Giuliani, who told me that he thinks that this should all be over by September the 1st. Now, he's saying he doesn't know if it will be over by September the 1st, but he thinks that Robert Mueller should be able to wrap it up by then. He told me if it goes much past the beginning of September, then everybody who's involved in this investigation could be accused of interfering with the election. Because if this thing does drag on, it gets closer and closer to those all-important midterms. But the response to Mueller went out about an hour ago. I've got two statements from the president's lead attorneys. Jay Sekulow saying, quote, "We have responded in writing to the latest proposal from the Office of Special Counsel regarding its request to interview the president. It is not appropriate at this time to comment publicly about the content of that response." From Rudy Giuliani, millions of pages of documents along with testimony from dozens of witnesses have been provided. We're restating what we have been saying for months. It is time for the Office of Special Counsel to conclude its inquiry without further delay. Speaking again to that September 1st timeline that Giuliani thinks that Mueller should have it wrapped up by. Now, while Giuliani would not go into the details of the counteroffer, he did tell Fox News it's not a refusal, but at the same time, it's not a completely unreasonable position. I can see a way, he told me, in which Mueller, may agree with it. Giuliani says the chances of Mueller accepting the offer depend on two things. A, how much they really want an interview with the president, and B, the degree to which they are willing to say this may be our last chance to get the sit down with the president. Harvard Law professor Alan Dershowitz was on Fox News earlier today in America's Newsroom. He thinks the strategy is to present Mueller with something he cannot accept. Listen here.
Well, I think the tactic is emerging and is fairly clear. The president wants to testify. His lawyers don't want him to testify. So the lawyers are going to set up a series of conditions, or put it in terms of The Godfather. They're going to make Mueller an offer he can't accept. And in the end, Mueller will say, look, I can't accept this offer, so we're going to subpoena you. The president will be able to say, look, I wanted to testify. It was Mueller who turned me down.
Giuliani acknowledged that Mueller may indeed try to subpoena the president if an agreement for an interview can't be worked out. The president's attorneys have repeatedly stated that they would fight any attempt in court to subpoena President Trump. Dershowitz suggesting that this fight could go on for months and end in a draw. Giuliani also told me this morning that they may be willing to allow the president to answer some questions that go to the issue of obstruction of justice if Mueller could give them a couple of sample questions that aren't, quote, red flags, that don't look like he's trying to set a trap. But so many attorneys across this land who have commented on this, Harris, believe that they are trying to set a trap for the president. Giuliani telling me that even if Mueller were to accept this offer that was transmitted about an hour ago, there's still an awful lot of work to do before Mueller would get a chance to sit down with the president. And the developments, they just come so quickly.
I know. I thought maybe you were getting another one, because people know that we wear earpieces and they wonder, is it clairvoyant? No, we're actually being talked to while we're talking. Before I let you go, John, because I want to talk about the timing of this. It is 90 days today until the midterm election. So, you know, you talk about wrapping something up in less than 30 days, or do you let that bleed toward the November election? That's actually not Bob Mueller's concern right now, but it certainly is a political concern.
Yeah, I don't think that Mueller is concerned at all about that, other than the fact that some pressure may be brought to bear in the Court of Public Relations and politics that, Mueller's dragging this thing out longer than it should be, which may play in the president's favor if he gets some sympathy on that point. At the same time, though, the president doesn't want this thing dragging toward the election because, if there were to be some sort of stunning revelation that happens, say, 30 days before the election, that could have an impact, too. So it's definitely in the president's interest to either, A, not have this happen, or if it does happen under very stringent conditions, and happen quickly. We'll see.
All right. Great to see you always with the breaking news. John Roberts. Let's do more. Republican Congressman Louis Gohmert of the House Judiciary Committee. Great to have you today. I want to start with your thoughts on now the answer back from the president's team, legal team, to Robert Mueller.
Well, I hope Dershowitz is right that they've laid conditions that Mueller won't accept, because it'd be a disaster. Eric Holder lied to us a number of times testifying before Congress. He was held in contempt, should have gone to jail. But Harris, I totally believe him when he says, look, I've known Robert Mueller for 20, 30 years, and he is not going to stop until he gets some kind of indictment against the president. And I think he's right. That's what Mueller wants to get. And when I hear that Giuliani is saying, oh, if it goes past September 1st, Mueller will be blamed for, playing politics and affecting the election. Mueller could care less. He would love to affect the election. This is a guy that sat down, looked Trump in the face, said, basically begging him to appoint him again as director of the FBI. And when he doesn't get it, he becomes special counsel of an area he's totally disqualified from, because he was FBI director and part of the investigation into Russia trying to buy uranium that enabled Hillary to get CFIUS to approve the sale so they could make $145 million. Mueller should be investigated, and instead he is a special counsel. This is a guy that doesn't care. He's hoping he will affect the election and screw over the president.
You always manage to break it down to some new category that we haven't seen. So you've just driven us in a lane of flip the switch on Robert Mueller. And it is interesting where we are right now, though. You say he wouldn't care about politics anyway. Lay conditions such that he won't accept. Wouldn't he then slap the president's team, the president, with a subpoena? And would that be better or worse?
Well, see, that's the way Mueller will look at it. And I used to be a pretty good lawyer because I could put myself in the
You're on the Judiciary Committee. You're an excellent lawyer.
Yeah. Well, and was a judge and chief justice. But look at it from Mueller's standpoint. Okay, he times this 90 days before the election and says we want to ask questions, knowing that they'll probably come back with conditions he can't accept. He will have to do a subpoena. And even if the president does agree to testify, then he gets him in a perjury trap, which will help him indict they indicted Mike Flynn when the FBI officer said, look, there is no
So you don't think there's a way to avoid, because that's, every attorney that I've interviewed, judges they're like, Harris, you don't sit down with the special counsel. You don't do it. And so my question is,
you should not.
Is no one able to sit
Trump's
down with
willing.
the special counsel and just not get into a perjury trap?
It's really difficult.
Wow.
Very, very difficult, especially when you've got people like Weissman and Mueller that they don't mind breaking the law to put people in jail. They've done it before. They'll do it again as long as they've got the power, and they've got the power. So from Mueller's standpoint, if the lawyers are willing to let the president sit down, and I know it's the president's decision, but he should not do that. It's wrong. It shouldn't do it.
Well, but the
if he
president
did,
has said
then Mueller's
he'll listen
thrilled.
to his counsel. He said that.
Well, because President Trump is a smart guy, and he really believes he knows he's not guilty of anything he's being investigated for. So why shouldn't he sit down when there are other implications? They would do anything to find something to indict him for. They will twist anything he says, no matter how he says it, and try to make it into an indictment. And from Mueller's standpoint, okay, so he can't accept the terms, then he's fighting the president, saying, you're obstructing, you're hiding. So they're fighting over the subpoena, and that affects the election. Mueller would love it.
Before I have to let you go, Congressman, is there anything to say about a positive movement forward by the president and Mueller going back and forth in all this? It sounds like a fruitless dance from what you're saying, but politically for the president, what does this accomplish?
Well, it is the president still saying, I'm still willing to sit down, hear the terms and conditions, but I don't think there are any that Mueller would accept other than just we'll ask what we want to, because he wants to drag this out. He wants to keep spending millions of taxpayer dollars without any oversight. Rosenstein was involved in the Russia investigation with Mueller, and so they're going to let this go on. Rosenstein ought to be investigated, but as long as Rosenstein is the Deputy Attorney General, then the president's in trouble and justice is not being done.
Wow. And can you get up from the table? Is it like Art of the Deal, where you sit down and I'm serious. I mean, if it's a lot tougher. It's tougher. It's
a lot tougher because once you begin to waive your Fifth Amendment rights and judges, you know, I've warned people, felons, accused felons, once you waive your Fifth Amendment rights and begin to testify, you waived your right. But now there are questions in a deposition that you can say, we're not answering that, and then you go litigate it to the judge. Again, Mueller would love that. It drags it out even longer, keeps him spending millions of dollars, and creates more political trouble for Republicans and the president.
Boy, you have given us a lot to think about and talk about now, as you always do, Congressman.
I guarantee you Mueller has thought about everything I've mentioned.
Interesting. From the great state of Texas. You set us up for this hour, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harrison.
Absolutely. Let me tell you what I'm talking about, because the man next to me has been nodding this entire time. Richard St. Paul is a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. You're listening, and what are you hearing that you're agreeing with?
First of all, you don't sit down with the special prosecutor. I've been in the office with a federal agent, my client who's a defendant, and doing a proffer, talking about what my client knows about this particular area, whether that can lead to getting a bigger fish.
Okay.
There's two people who sit down with the prosecutors: those who have nothing to lose and those that have everything to gain. The people who have everything to gain is those people who don't want to go to jail by cooperating. Those who have nothing to lose are not facing any criminal potential criminal outlay. The president has everything to lose because Mueller is seeking to capture the big fish, and
he sees him as the big fish.
Absolutely. He's at the top of the food chain. So the president has everything to lose by sitting down with Mueller.
All right. Can I just ask, in the beginning, we were looking to see if there were any connections between the Trump campaign and Russia. And the word really, and Rudy Giuliani gets this right, the word collusion is not the crime. It would be conspiracy or obstruction of justice. We have now paddled our boat into the middle of the water, so far afield of either shore of those types of topic. You know, there's the political sit down for the base. The president may not even need to do that anymore in terms of getting following because of what's going on. And he's playing ball by answering back to Mueller.
Excellent point. Why should the president sit down when he's not being accused of, there's no evidence that he colluded. Now, collusion is not a legal definition. It's not under Title 18 of the Criminal Act.
So why do they even use that word?
It's a very simple term for people to digest. But the main term is conspiracy to violate campaign finance crimes. So what happens is that foreign money...
Is one harder to prove than the other? Is that why they use that word?
Well, no, it's all the same thing. So it's all the same in terms of what the actions are. So there's no foreign money allowed into our elections. What Mueller is looking at is whether Russian operatives funded the Trump campaign to elect the president. That's the conspiracy. That's the campaign violations. That's the collusion between the two.
17 intel agencies have looked at this and said they meddled, but not to the benefit of one candidate or the other. Where else does it need to come from?
Which is exactly right. Why would the president sit down when there is no strong allegation, there's no information that says that he was involved with this conspiracy to violate campaign finance laws? Or criminal laws at that. Why would you sit down with someone?
So we're trying to get also to another point of breaking news real quickly. Mueller has said that he wouldn't indict or can't indict a sitting president. Yet you hear Congressman Gomer talking about they're seeking for something. They're just looking something to indict on. Can you or can't you indict a president?
You can. If you break the law, obviously you can be indicted. Whether you can be removed from office is the question.
Now, see, those are two different things.
Absolutely.
That's political. All right. Sit tight.